you to the church for inviting me. It's great to be back. And I'm going to be talking about my experience walking the Camino, and um, and I'm going to use a book, if you go to the next slide, a book called The Art of Pilgrimage by Phil Cousineau that talks about steps that you can, if you follow, that you can transform a vacation into a transformative experience, or in other words, a pilgrimage. So these steps are on the next slide. And these steps are from the book that I just talked about. You can read them up there, but I'm going to talk about each one of them in the coming slides. So the next slide. So this is a statue of St. James the Pilgrim, or in Spanish, Santiago Peregrino. And the first step is figuring out what you are looking for and what is calling you. I heard about the Camino de Santiago 15 years ago, and it was described as kind of a new age spiritual experience that involved hiking across Spain. And there are hostels to stay at and cafes to eat at all along the route. I was immediately hooked and knew that I wanted to do that one day. But I want to tell a little bit about the story of how, why this pilgrimage, why does it go across Spain? Because St. James was from Israel. So according to legend, St. James the Apostle traveled to Spain in the early years of his ministry. There he met with little success. He returned to Jerusalem, where he was martyred in 44 AD. Then, according to legend, 2 of his disciples took his body into a rudderless boat. It floated across the Mediterranean into the Atlantic and ended up in northwest Spain, and there his disciples buried the apostle. The tomb remained hidden for over 700 years, and then around the year 814, a Spanish hermit named Pelayo witnessed mysterious starry signs in the sky. He reported it to his bishop, and the bishop followed the lead pointed out by the stars, discovered a tomb, and concluded that this tomb was the tomb of St. James. Very soon after, a small church was built, and then later a cathedral was built over the tomb. And in the Middle Ages, millions of people made pilgrimages to that tomb and to Santiago. And then it kind of dwindled away, but then in the 1960s, the hippies discovered it, and it became a popular destination again. And now hundreds of thousands of people make this same pilgrimage every year. Now, a little side note, in my opinion, it's pretty easy to poke holes in that story. However, someone once wrote, "What is important about a shrine is not what can be documented by historians, but what has transpired in the hearts of pilgrims." So next slide. So the second step is preparing for your journey. Most pilgrimages involve a significant challenge to complete. Once you have decided to make a pilgrimage, it is important to properly prepare. There were several things I did. I took a class on the Camino at Forever Learning, or is that what it's called? Forever Learning. And I learned all about the nuts and bolts, what to wear. I wore kind of what I'm wearing today. I had all my clothes in this backpack, everything that I needed for that pilgrimage. I found out where to sleep, where to eat, where to find toilets, and so on. I also spent a few minutes each day for almost a year trying to learn or learning a little bit of Spanish. And I joined a hiking club so that I would be able to walk 15 miles a day. Next slide. So the next step of making transforming a journey into a pilgrimage or a transformative experience is traveling like a pilgrim. So to do that, I decided to get rid of all distractions that I could think of while I was on the Camino, which was mostly this phone. So no Facebook, no news, no phone calls. And I also decided I wanted to stay in hostels instead of getting a more luxurious accommodation so that I would be closer to the other pilgrims. I said that Pilgrim's Prayer that I read earlier, I tried to read that every day as before I started to remind me that this was a sacred journey. Next slide. I also stopped in churches all along the way and tried to participate or just be a part of what was going on in the church, but also just looking at the statues. And I learned about two new saints. I mean, I grew up Catholic. I knew a lot about saints, but these two I hadn't heard of. And they were very common. So one was San Roque, El Peregrino, or the Pilgrim, and the other was Saint Isidore, the farmer. And I grew up on a farm, so it was great to see a saint for farmers. Next slide. I also, while I wasn't calling Ron, I did write little stories almost every day about what I was experiencing and shared that with Ron. And next slide. And a critical part of the Camino experience was talking to other pilgrims. Here I am walking up the Hill of Forgiveness. These mountains in Spain just had wonderful names. And I'm talking with one of my new Camino friends, Linda, there. And the next slide. Here I am having a pilgrim dinner in the ruins of a medieval convent and hospital. I mean, it was an incredible experience. Next slide. So the fourth step of these 6 steps of making a journey into a transformative experience is embracing setbacks and obstacles. I faced 4 big challenges during my Camino. The first 3 I'm not going to go into detail about. I sprained my calf muscle while I was training. My backpack was too heavy, and I came down with a cold on day 17. And I'm not going to go into details about those 3. But then things were going great. And then they weren't. Disaster struck. On day 25, as I was leaving Lyon, I was about 2/3 of the way through my planned journey. So as I was leaving Lyon, my right shin started to hurt. And it turns out between Lyon and Astorga, the next major town, was 30 or 40 miles, and there were very few cafes, very few places to stop, and no medical facilities. And so I walked over 2 days between those 2 towns, and my leg started hurting more and more. When I finally made it to Astorga, I immediately went to a medical facility, and there I was told that I had tendinitis. Communication was a challenge with my limited Spanish, but I understood that it would be best to stop walking for many days to let the tendonitis heal. And my dream was to walk every step of the way. But after pleading for another option, I was told, well, okay, you can walk a couple miles, you'll have your backpack sent ahead, and then take a taxi. I tried that for 3 days. I felt ridiculous. While my Camino friends were walking 15 miles a day, I struggled to walk 3. And I was in the depths of despair and just wanted to go back home to Michigan. But then miraculously, I met the exact person that I needed at that time. She owned the hostel that I was staying at, but she was also a physical therapist. And she gave me the perfect advice. She said something like, I see so many pilgrims with serious injuries, but they think the only way to do the Camino is to walk every step of the way. The universe and your body are telling you you need to find your own way, a way that's right for you. So next slide. So I had heard about a place nearby where you could reserve a horse to go up the next mountain. I decided that was far better than a bus or taxi. And then next slide. And then miraculously, at the top of the mountain, there was a place you could rent bicycles to go down the mountain, and I could do that. So I rode the bike down the mountain. And the next slide. And miraculously, at the bottom of the mountain was an ancient monastery, and they let me stay there for 4 days for my leg to heal. And then let's see, next slide. So now I'm moving on to the step 5. What do you do when you arrive at your destination? And part of this is really paying attention to every moment as you walk into your destination. So as I was walking into Santiago. So after my leg felt better, I rode in a bus to catch up to my Camino friends, and I was very happy as I walked into Santiago to finish my pilgrimage. Now I want to read 2 quotes from the book, The Art of Pilgrimage, about what to do that day or those. I spent 3 days in Santiago. The first quote, "The call that brought you here was a call to pay closer attention to the sacred source of your life." And the second quote, "The purpose is to be in the moment and enjoy each step that you take." And now I would like to read a few quotes from the book, The Art of Pilgrimage, about the last step. The last step is called bringing back the blessings. So what do you do once your pilgrimage is over? How do you incorporate that into your life? So the first quote, "The aim of the quest must not be ecstasy for myself, but the wisdom and the power to serve others." And the second quote, "How do I keep sacred memories alive? I see the time of return as a time of listening to dreams and creating something new as the awakening continues." And I keep reminding myself of that, maybe not every day, but I remind myself of that very frequently. So the next slide. So, and again, this is the 6 steps. Here again are the steps to help you make your travel into a pilgrimage or a transformative journey to a sacred space. And you can read the steps, but I'm going to leave you with 2 or 3 questions for you to think about of how you can transform your journeys into pilgrimages. So the first question to think about is, what transformative journeys are calling you? And then as you embark on your journey, what distractions might hold you back from the transformation you desire? How might you get rid of those distractions while you are on your journey? And then the last question, what can you do to make your journey sacred? So thank you everyone for listening. Buen Camino, have a great pilgrimage.
Let there be an offering now to sustain and strengthen this place, which is sacred.